Welcome to The Know, I'm Ashley Jenkins.
I'm Mica Burton.
And today we're going to talk about two extra fun topics. Do video game stories suck? And do they steal money from hard-working writers?
Whee!
Yeah, well that's the opinion of the original author of the novels The Witcher games are based off of. And oh boy, has he got some strong opinions about it.
Interview, the Polish author BLASTS video game narratives expresses some frustrations with developer CD Projekt Red and believes his books made the games popular, not the other way around, and claims the game stole sales from his books.
Yikes. Well, good thing you gave all the rights away and didn't ask for any of the royalties, right? Because you thought it wasn't going to be a success. Not that he's bitter about that or anything.
These choice comments about video games, and the Witcher games in particular, came from a Waypoint interview with Andrzej Sapkowski, the best-selling author of the Witcher novels. You might not have known those even existed, I didn't, but they do. There are 8 of them in total, with 5 in the saga, 1 of them standalone, and 2 are short story collections.
Sapkowski started them in the mid-80s and continued them into the 90s, although he did release another standalone, Season of Storms, back in 2013. The 5-book saga covers the time about 5 years before the Witcher games, so they mostly provide the characters, backstory, and world building if you feel like reading them, and a lot of Witcher fans really got into that world and do.
But anyway, back to what Sapkowski said about CD Projekt Red and video game narratives. And about video games' ability to tell a good story, Sapkowski certainly has his doubts. He said, "How much substance can there be in the lines of text when the hero walks through the woods and talks to a squirrel? Where's the literature in that? Where's the room for depth or sophisticated language with games that could elevate culture? There is none."
Yeah, this isn't the first time Sapkowski has made disparaging comments about our favorite pastime, although he claims he holds no animosity against them. In fact, he even says he respects CD Projekt Red's work on The Witcher as high level. However, he's not as big a fan of the company anymore based on some of his comments.
A lot of that has to do with how the games have affected his books. Sapkowski complained in the interview that most of the time when he talks about his books, the audience is filled with kids who think the books are based on the games as opposed to the other way around.
Now, according to Sapkowski, that fault lies with CD Projekt Red, not him. He said, "They may not know that, and CDPR bravely conceals the game's origins. It's written in fine print, you need a microscope to see it, that the game is based on my books."
He went on to say, "The belief widely spread by CDPR that the games made me more popular outside of Poland is completely false. I made the games popular. All of my translations in the West, including the English one, were published before the first game."
Thing is, that's not entirely accurate, at least according to the publishing dates of Sapkowski's work. The second, and translated run of his Witcher books didn't actually get published until 2007 and 2008 for the short story collections, which would have been after the first game released in 2006.
Ooh, ouch. But Sapkowski doesn't stop there, because he goes on to say that he contributed more players to the games than the games contributed to his books, believing that they hurt his sales. He said, "If anything, there are more people who have played the games because they read my books. That's my count, but I'm not sure. I never did any studies."
Well, it's really easy to come to a conclusion if you don't have any studies. As for his claims about the actual sales numbers, those are a little bit harder to find. On a 2015 list of top-selling science fiction and fantasy authors, he was listed as number 125 on the list, having moved over 2 million copies of the Witcher books in Poland alone, which is a very impressive number for a novel in a region as small as Poland.
That list didn't include worldwide numbers, but just as we stated, the books didn't hit worldwide until after the games anyway. So assuming he sold all 2 million of those before the games came out,
well, it's had since the 80s.
Right, it still doesn't quite hold a candle to the game's sales, which total over, 25 million for the franchise.
Yeah, but he might have contributed 2 million of those.
Oh, you know what? You are right.
We don't have any way to tell for sure if the book sales came before or after the games came out. It's not really the way they're keeping track of things and publishing them, but it is worth noting that if they were crazy successful when they first launched, the publisher probably would have been fairly motivated to bring it out in other languages, but that didn't happen until, like we said, the games came out and found success.
So while there's no doubt that the books did find a nice audience in, Poland, it's a bit harder to prove that he lent the franchise its fame. Yes, without him, the games wouldn't have existed in the first place, but his claims that the games stole sales from him and that he made the games popular don't really have much to back them up.
Of course, this isn't the first time he's lamented being the guy who wrote The Witcher. In a previous interview with Eurogamer earlier this year, he complained that most people assume the books are based on the games, which really irks him. I do get that though. If you invent something, it's gotta be frustrating, and there's really nothing you can do about it, but it's got to be frustrating that he sees so many people thinking that the books are based off the games. But what that tells me more than anything is people found the games and then found the books. That's what that story tells me. But again, we haven't done any studies, so we can come to whatever conclusion we like.
Just like him. What also irks him is the fact that he gave away all the rights to the series and refused to accept a percentage of the profit. Sapkowski said, "I was stupid enough to sell them rights to the whole bunch. They offered me a percentage of their profits. I said, no, there will be no profit at all. Give me all of my money, right now, the whole amount." It was stupid. I was stupid enough to leave everything in their hands because I didn't believe in their success. But who could foresee their success? I couldn't.
Well, considering The Witcher 3's generated more than $255 million in revenue on its own, yeah, that probably stings just a little bit. It's hard to blame him too much for that. CD Projekt Red as a studio, their name was made on The Witcher games.
True.
And it's just as possible that they could have faded away into obscurity. They didn't. They built into a huge success, and that's a very difficult thing to predict, but it does hurt after the fact that we go, yeah, think how, you calculate how much you could have now that you just don't have.
That must be rough.
It's gonna put you in a bad mood.
Yeah, and as for Sapkowski's claims that he alone is responsible for The Witcher's video game success, rather than the games making his series popular, well, that's, up for dispute. Waypoint also spoke with another renowned author, Dmitry Glukovsky, who authored the Metro books that the video games are based on, and Glukovsky totally disagrees with Sapkowski's claims.
When asked for comment, Glukovsky said, "I think that he's totally wrong, and that he's an arrogant motherfucker."
He also elaborated a little more than that, insisting that without the games, The Witcher would never have found its footing in the West. This got people hooked. He would remain a local Eastern European phenomenon without this, but he never would break into the West, and same goes for the Metro books.
From there, Glukovsky mostly talked about how the Metro video games increased awareness of his work, and because of that, he kind of did the unthinkable and just handed over most of the series to other creators. He even lets fans take over and contribute books of their own, resulting in about a dozen other works all set in the same universe. So he comes at it from a very different angle.
For him, he's not part of the generation that views games as bad art, but rather that there's a way to use them to tell artful stories. And really, that's the difference between these two authors. It's mostly a generational mindset.
It's actually kind of interesting, though, that video games can still have this kind of stigma attached to them, despite volumes of evidence to the contrary. Not only have we seen very artfully told stories in the medium, we've also seen massive sales successes that outpace other visual mediums like TV and movies in terms of revenue, that is. And you know what? Sure, not every game is a deep thinker. You know what else isn't a deep thinker? A lot of movies.
Yeah.
No one goes to a summer blockbuster to think.
But listen,
but
don't tell Sapkowski that, though.
What do you guys think about the Witcher author's comments about video game storytelling capabilities? Do you think the books would be as popular without the games? Which do you think made which popular? Who's an arrogant son of a bitch and who's real nice? Let us know all of those sorts of things in the comments.
For future updates on games versus other forms of entertainment and us trying to pronounce Eastern European things, remember to like this video, and if you're new around here, subscribe to the Know. In a new interview, the Polish and about video games' abilities to tell a good story. If anything, It's still a bit harder to prove that he lent out the franchise. But his claims that the game sold... Waypoint also spoke with... Oh, fuck me.